The betrayal wasn't whispered. It was screamed into my daughter's face. Freak. Monster. Fire girl. I watched from across the school parking lot as my 12-year-old Emily shrank into herself, clutching her sleeves down tight against her wrists. The group of kids around her laughed, their cruelty louder than the autumn wind. And the boy in the center, tall, smirking, untouchable, spat the words like he owned the world. My stomach twisted. My fists ached to break glass. That boy's name was Tyler. And Tyler was the son of Mark Donovan. A man everyone in town knew, the kind of man people shook hands with at church, smiled at in grocery aisles, nodded to with false respect. But right there under the bleeding sunset, his son carved my daughter's spirit into pieces. My name is Sarah, I said to myself like a vow. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Have you ever looked at your child and realized the world saw their pain before you did? Emily's scars weren't new. They mapped her arms like ghost rivers, pale reminders of a fire that nearly stole her when she was 6. She had fought to live, but now, she was fighting to belong. I wanted to storm across the pavement, drag that boy by the collar, scream at the parents who raised him. But instead I froze, my own shame tangling with fury. Because when Emily looked up at me, her eyes begged one thing: don't make it worse, Mom. I drove her home in silence. The air between us was thick, heavy, unbreathable. Her sleeves rode up for a moment on the steering wheel. I saw the scars. She yanked them down fast as if even I couldn't bear to see. That night, after she finally cried herself to sleep, I sat in the dark kitchen staring at a single glass of water. My hands trembled. Rage gnawed at me, but beneath it was something worse: guilt. Had I cursed her life? Was I the reason her body became a target? I couldn't sleep. So the next day I went to the source. Mark Donovan's house sat like a fortress on the edge of town. 2 stories of smugness, manicured lawn, the kind of place that screamed power. I knocked. He opened the door in a pressed shirt, phone in hand, a practiced smile on his lips. But the moment I spoke, that smile cracked. "Your son is tormenting my daughter," I told him, voice steady but shaking inside. "She has burn scars, yes. But that doesn't give Tyler the right to destroy her every single day." I expected denial. I expected anger. Instead, his eyes dropped, heavy, almost reluctant. "Burn scars," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "On her arms." His hand froze on the doorframe. His face turned pale, the blood draining like a ghost leaving a body. His next words were a whisper that burned colder than winter air. "I know those scars." And in that silence I realized, this wasn't just about my daughter anymore. For a second I thought I misheard him. But no. Mark Donovan's lips were trembling. His eyes flickered down the hall as though someone might be listening. "What do you mean you know those scars?" I demanded. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut. He hesitated. Then his smile returned, but this one was brittle, fragile, forced. "You've got the wrong idea," he said too quickly. "Kids are cruel." I talked to Tyler. He moved to shut the door. Instinct kicked in. I caught it with my palm before the frame slammed. Pain shot through my hand, but I didn't let go. "No," I said. "You don't get to brush this off." "What did you mean?" For a heartbeat he just stared at me. Then, softer than a prayer, he muttered, "I've seen scars like that before. On someone I once knew." I wanted to press further, but something in his tone made my chest tighten. His eyes weren't just haunted. They were guilty. I left, my mind buzzing. At home, Emily was curled up on the couch, sleeves still tugged over her arms. I sat beside her, stroking her hair as the TV flickered. She leaned against me, small and tired. She whispered, "Mom, why do people hate me for what happened?" My throat locked. How could I explain that cruelty wasn't about her? It was about them. I kissed her forehead instead. "You're stronger than they'll ever be, baby." But my words were thin bandages over wounds that kept bleeding. That night I couldn't sleep. Mark's pale face kept replaying in my head. His voice, "I know those scars." So the next morning I began digging. I drove to the public library, the kind that still kept old newspapers on microfilm. I searched through dusty reels, scrolling through headlines of fires, accidents, tragedies. My fingers cramped as hours slipped by. Then I found it. House fire on Willow Lane, 2 injured, arson suspected. The date, 14 years ago. The victims, a woman and her young daughter. The photo showed a burned-out shell of a home, black against the sky. The article didn't name the child, but the woman's name made my stomach drop. Laura Donovan. Mark's wife. Tyler's mother. My pulse thundered. The report said Laura had survived with burns, but the daughter's condition was unknown. Police suspected foul play, accelerant found at the scene. But no one was ever charged. My mouth went dry. I stared at the grainy photo until my vision blurred. Could it be? Could the scars on my Emily somehow tie back to them? I rushed home, my hands trembling as I unlocked the door. Emily was in her room, sketching quietly. She looked up, her eyes innocent, searching. "Sweetheart," I asked carefully, "do you remember anything from before the fire? Anything about people, names, places?" She frowned, confused. "Just smoke. Just heat. And someone pulling me out." "Who?" I pressed. But before she could answer, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice, low and urgent, cut through the static. "Stop asking questions about the fire. Or your daughter won't be the only one with scars." The line went dead, and my world turned to ash all over again. I stood frozen, clutching the phone like it might bite me. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. My reflection in the black screen looked pale, wild-eyed, like I'd stepped into a nightmare I didn't remember entering. Whoever that voice belonged to, they knew about the fire. They knew about my daughter. And they wanted me to stop digging. But how do you stop when the truth is the only thing keeping you breathing? That night I sat by Emily's bed. She was asleep, her hair fanned out across the pillow, her face soft, the only time the world couldn't touch her. I traced the faint lines of her scars with my eyes, and something inside me hardened. I whispered to the dark, "No one will hurt her again. No one." The next day I parked outside the Donovan house again. This time I waited. Mark left for work early, a shiny black sedan pulling out of the driveway. Tyler caught the bus. The house was empty. I shouldn't have done it. But I did. I broke in. The air inside smelled faintly of cologne and old wood polish. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat screaming, "Leave, leave, leave." But I moved forward, slow, deliberate. I searched the study first. Papers stacked in neat piles, books on law and real estate. Nothing. Then a drawer, locked. I pried it open with a letter opener. Inside, a folder. I flipped it open. And there was photos. Grainy, black and white, but sharp enough to twist my stomach. A burned house. A scorched doll. A little girl carried in a firefighter's arms. The headline clipped to it. "Arson investigation stalls. Family remains silent." And on the back of one photo, in handwriting I recognized from the man's check signatures at the grocery store, were 4 chilling words. He was supposed to die. I dropped the photo. My breath caught in my throat like smoke. The little girl. She was Emily. I would have known those eyes anywhere. The truth slammed into me. This wasn't random. My daughter's scars weren't just an accident. Someone had tried to erase her. And Mark Donovan knew exactly who. Before I could gather myself, the sound of tires crunched on the driveway. My chest seized. I stuffed the folder back, bolted for the back door, slipped out just as the front door opened. I ran, lungs burning, until I was safe inside my car. That night I barely slept. I kept hearing his whisper at the door. "I know those scars." He knew because they weren't just scars. They were evidence. Evidence of a crime buried under years of silence. The next morning, Emily didn't want to go to school. She sat at the table, head down, her sleeve slipping just enough for me to see the pale ridges of her skin. "I don't belong anywhere," she murmured. I swallowed hard, tears burning behind my eyes. "You belong with me," I said. "And I promise you, no one will ever make you feel less than whole again." But as I said it, a shadow moved past my window. A figure. Watching. And I realized, someone already knew I'd found the truth. The figure outside my window didn't knock. It just lingered. A shape cut out of the dawn light, tall, still, deliberate. My heart stuttered. I pulled Emily back from the window and reached for the kitchen drawer where I kept the pepper spray. By the time I turned back, the figure was gone. A note fluttered on the porch. I stepped out, scanning the empty street, the autumn leaves swirling like embers. The paper was plain, folded once, and the handwriting was a thin, jagged scrawl. "Stop, or you'll lose her for good." I crumpled it in my fist. My hands shook, but my pulse steadied. Fear was a luxury. Fear wouldn't save Emily. That morning, I drove her to school myself. I watched Tyler and his friends from across the lot. Their laughter louder than the bell, crueler than any fire. Emily kept her eyes down, but her shoulders were squared now, maybe sensing something shifting inside me. "Mom," she whispered before she got out. "Why are you staring at him like that?" "Because, sweetheart, I thought I'm memorizing the face of the boy whose father tried to erase you." I smiled instead. "Go on. I'll be right here." When she disappeared into the building, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Detective Carla Ruiz. She'd worked the Willow Lane fire before being pushed off the case. She'd once told me, over a bar counter and too many cigarettes, "It stinks of power, Sarah. Someone big wanted this buried." She answered on the second ring. "Sarah, it's been a while." "I found something," I said. "Photos. Notes." He knew. "He knows everything." A long pause. "Meet me at the old diner. Noon." I hung up. My fingers gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. At the diner, Carla looked older, sharper, her badge now replaced by a PI's license. She sipped her coffee, eyes scanning the parking lot before she leaned in. "Tell me everything." I did. The bullying. Mark's pale face. Folder. The note. She listened, jaw tightening. "That fire," she muttered. "I always thought it was an insurance scam gone wrong. But if your daughter was there, if she survived." "She survived," I said, my voice a knife. "And now they're trying to break her all over again." Carla nodded slowly. "Then we don't wait for them to make the next move. We hit first." I blinked. "Hit. Not literally. We gather proof. We make it public. We burn his reputation before he can touch your daughter." Something inside me flared. I'd spent years trying to keep Emily invisible, safe in the shadows. But shadows hadn't saved her. The diner's window reflected my face back at me, tired but no longer helpless. I whispered, "Then let's start a fire he can't put out." Carla's eyes sparked. "Good girl." Outside, across the parking lot, a black sedan idled. Watching. We started like detectives and terrorists at once. Careful, impatient, hungry. Carla handed me a list the way a surgeon hands a scalpel. Names, dates, file numbers. "We go public slow and clean," she said. "No vigilante bullshit. We use paper, witnesses, cameras. We make the truth undeniable." First stop. County records. Carla knew an auditor who still owed her a favor. Within hours we sat in a cramped office surrounded by the smell of toner and old coffee, scrolling through deeds and insurance filings. Mark Donovan's name was a neat line through years of returns, investments, donations, committee memberships. And one entry that flared like a wound. A $52,000 insurance disbursement to the Donovans, dated 2 weeks after the Willow Lane fire. The claim was marked structural loss. "That's a lot for a burned porch," Carla muttered. Her fingers tapped the table like drumbeats. "Especially if arson was suspected." We printed everything. Paperweights for war. Next we dug into court transcripts. The town had a habit of sweeping messy things into folders and forgetting. Under miscellaneous, we found a brief. A claim against unknown assailant, dismissed for lack of evidence. A contractor's name recurred. Harlan Briggs. Harlan, whose business specialized in restoration. Harlan, whose license had oddly lapsed the year after the fire. We tracked Harlan down to a trailer at the edge of town. He smelled like kerosene and old cigarettes, and he tried to shut the door on us. But Carla's presence, her badge, her stare, unlocked him quicker than any hand. He caved like summer wood. "They paid me," he said, nervous and greasy. "They wanted it cleaned up fast." Said keep quiet, they'd square me with cash. I didn't light anything, I just did the cleanup. I swear. Who paid you? I asked. My voice was a blade. He swallowed. Mark Donovan. Checks. Kish. I have one left in the truck. Harlan produced a stained envelope and a cancelled check. The signature matched the ones in the folder I'd stolen from Mark's study. My hands went numb when I touched it. Money can look like detergent on a check, so clean you can't see the grime underneath. Carla's eyes were a blade of light. We have motive, means, and a payment trail. But motives without a voice or gossip. We needed someone who would put their name to the story. So we called Ana Reyes, the city reporter who had once gotten a mayor to resign with nothing but a shoe leather grind and a nose for rotten fruit. Ana met us at a cafe with her recorder open like a wound. We showed her the prints, the check, the microfilmed article, Harlan's statement. Her pen moved fast. If this holds, it's the biggest thing this town's seen in a long time, she whispered, eyes hard. We planned our timing like a heist. Ana would run a quiet, explosive piece. Documents, interviews, a front-page layout timed to the Donovans' charity gala that weekend. Mark loved the gala. He'd be surrounded by handshakes and applause, the very things that had always bought him silence. Expose him in a place where his mask's lightest, Carla said. Where everyone will see the stain. That night I went home and watched Emily sleep. Her face was moonlit porcelain. I tucked the folder of prints under my pillow like a talisman. Proof felt heavier than a brick, but it felt truthful. At 2:12 a.m. my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text, we're watching you. Stop now. I stared at the words until they blurred. My chest tightened. Fear arrived in a new room of the house. Beside guilt and rage, a fourth tenant. Determination. We had a plan. We had witnesses. We had paper that bled the truth. And somewhere in a well-lit room, Mark Donovan was polishing his speech for the gala, not knowing that by Sunday his world would begin to burn in public. Proof, I realized as I closed my eyes, isn't mercy. It's hunger. The night before the gala, the town smelled like wet leaves and polished wood, the kind of clean you can't buy without a receipt. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by evidence like a makeshift altar. Prints, checks, Harlan's shaky confession, Ana's draft pages. Each paper pulsed with possibility. Each one felt like a promise I'd made to Emily. Carla called it midnight. Her voice was a rasp of cigarette smoke and calculation. They're circling, she said. Donovan's lawyer called Ana this afternoon. Threatened defamation. Said he'll file suit, press charges, scare people away. Can he? I asked because my hands were suddenly small and human. He can try. But Ana's iron. And we're clean. Still, threats have teeth. They bite the edges of courage and chew until the brave grow timid. I couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. I drove past the Donovan house at 1 a.m. because I couldn't sleep and because fear likes to be faced. Lights burned on inside. A domestic aquarium of wealth. Mark moved through a second-floor window, speech practicing in his spine, a man polishing his virtue in private. He looked ordinary from the street. Husband, father, donor. Ordinary is the world's best lie. The next morning Emily woke with a lipstick smear on her homework and a note from a teacher about increased teasing. I folded the note over and over until the paper softened. She watched me, that small ferocity still coiled in her shoulders. Mom, she said, what if they make it worse when they're exposed? I wanted to promise safety and knew I couldn't. So I told the truth. Then we don't only expose them, I said. We make everyone look. We make the town watch what hiding does. We don't break them for the spectacle. We break the silence. At noon Ana sent the layout. Headline in clean black. Donovan's and the Willow Lane fire. Pay-to cover up? The spread was surgical. Photos, receipts, Harlan's quote, Mark's civic smile clipped from a yearbook. My stomach rolled like the ocean before a storm. This was it. Carla and I sat 2 rows back at the gala, like vultures tucked in sympathy's feathers. Emily was home with my sister under the guise of staying the night. I wore a dress I hadn't worn in years, armor disguised as satin. I kept my hands in my pockets like I could hold myself together that way. Mark walked the room like a shark wearing a tuxedo. Lights caught sweat at his temples. His handshake was a practice thing. People drank his cocktail of charm like it was medicine. He gave speeches about community and resilience while I listened for the crack in his vocabulary. Then someone tapped my shoulder. Anna, cheeks bright, whispering, "We're live in 30. Her phone hummed like a beehive. Reporters leaned in. Cameras took positions like teeth closing. Across the room, Mark's face flickered when servers set the program slideshow, the same one that would carry Anna's headline across screens later that night. He laughed a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. A man in a navy suit, Donovan's lawyer, slipped a folded note into his hand. Mark read it and the color left his face like spilled milk. For a breath, the room became a body of held air. Then Mark smiled, fragile, and raised his glass. "To community," he said, voice steady enough to cut glass. My hands trembled. My chest ached. We were about to pull the curtain on a man who had built his life on the stage of other people's suffering. And as the first toast echoed, a server tripped near the dais, a wine stain blossoming like a bruise on Mark's pristine cuff. The lights flickered. Someone shouted. Cameras pivoted. In that tiny chaos, truth leaned forward, hungry and unstoppable. When the slideshow began, the room shifted, a live animal sensing scent. The first slide, the burned shell of Willow Lane, filled the screen. Gasps moved like a ripple through a pool. Mark's hand went to his chest as if to hold the pieces of his life from spilling. He didn't look at me. He looked at the screen. And for the first time since the fire, there was an audience to the damage it had done. The room convulsed like a throat swallowing something too large. Forks froze midair. Glasses trembled in hands that no longer knew what to toast. The slideshow marched on mercilessly. Headlines, checks, the Willow Lane fire. Gasps turned into murmurs, then whispers, then questions shouted across linen-covered tables. Is this real? By God, did he? And then came the photo. A firefighter carrying a little girl out of smoke, her arms bandaged, her eyes wide and terrified. Emily. My Emily. The silence was knife-sharp. Mark Donovan staggered forward, snatching the microphone from its stand. His tuxedo looked like armor splitting at the seams. "This is slander," he boomed, voice breaking. "A calculated attack. Lies." But the projection screen didn't lie. Neither did the check in Harlan's handwriting, the one now 10 feet tall for every guest to see. Neither did the fear in the crowd, because fear recognizes its own. Anna stepped forward, recorder in hand, like she was born for that moment. "Mr. Donovan, do you deny paying Harlan Briggs to conceal evidence of arson at your own property?" The lawyer shouted for silence. Cameras flashed. Mark's mouth opened, but no words came. Only a twitch, a tremor in his jaw, as if the truth was acid he couldn't spit or swallow. I rose. My chair scraped across marble like thunder. "My daughter," I said, my voice a blade that cut through the static, "was in that fire. He wears the scars you tried to erase. And your son has been bullying her with the very proof of your crime." All eyes swung to me. Some pity. Some disbelief. But in the corner I caught Tyler's face. Pale, small, stripped of arrogance. He wasn't laughing anymore. Mark's denial collapsed into shouting. He pounded the podium with his fist, words spiraling into incoherence. "She was supposed," then he bit the sentence in half, choking it down. But too late. He had said enough. Carla leaned close to me, her whisper hot and certain. "Got him." Security moved in. Guests rose, some backing away, others filming on their phones. The gala was no longer a celebration. It was a tribunal. And the verdict was already forming in the shape of stares that wouldn't forgive. I left before the cuffs snapped, before the cameras swarmed the exit. Outside, the night smelled of smoke and rain, two ghosts tangled together. Emily was waiting at my sister's. She sat up on the couch when I came in, her sketchbook still in her lap. "Mom," she whispered. I knelt in front of her, my hands trembling as I pulled her sleeves back, gently, showing the scars she always tried to hide. "These don't make you weak," I said, tears breaking free. "They make you proof. Proof that you survived what was meant to kill you." And tonight the world finally saw it. Her eyes filled not with shame this time but something new. Something like fire. Not the kind that destroys but the kind that lights a path. He touched my cheek. Then maybe I don't have to hide anymore. For the first time I believed her. But revenge isn't just exposure. It's closure. And I wasn't finished yet. The morning after the gala, the town was raw with whispers. The Donovan's house, once a fortress of manicured perfection, sat heavy and silent. Curtains drawn, cars absent. News vans lined the street like vultures waiting on a carcass. Anna's article had detonated. It wasn't just headlines anymore. It was interviews, leaks, old neighbors from Willow Lane who remembered the smoke and screams. Every paper, every feed, every local channel carried the same truth. Mark Donovan had buried a fire under money and lies. But I wasn't done. Revenge wasn't just watching him fall. It was making sure he couldn't crawl back up. Carla and I met at her office, the folder spread across the desk like sacred scripture. She lit a cigarette, ash dangling, and said, "They'll prosecute. Fraud. Attempted homicide if we push the right deal. But we need the nail in the coffin." That nail came sooner than I thought. A week later, Harlan Briggs called me. His voice cracked like brittle wood. He threatened me. Said he'd finish what he started if I opened my mouth. But I'm done being scared. I'll testify. When the trial came, the courthouse steps filled with faces. Some curious, some furious, some simply hungry for spectacle. I walked with Emily's hand in mine, her sleeves rolled up by choice. Cameras caught the scars, but she didn't flinch. She met their gaze like she was tired of disappearing. Inside, Mark looked smaller, thinner, his power stripped by daylight and public memory. Tyler sat behind him, shoulders bent, no smirk left. Maybe he finally saw the legacy his father had tried to hand him. Cruelty built from ashes. Harlan testified. Carla produced the checks. Anna's reporting became evidence, her words sharpened into legal teeth. And when the jury returned, the verdict fell heavy and final. Guilty. Fraud, concealment, reckless endangerment. Prison years stretched before Mark Donovan like an open road to nowhere. I didn't smile when they led him away. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was steel. Cold, sharp, unyielding. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Sarah, how does it feel? Do you have anything to say?" I looked at Emily. She stood tall, scars shining in the sunlight like rivers carved into her skin. For the first time, she wasn't pulling her sleeves down. I spoke loud enough for every microphone. She lived. He tried to erase her and she lived. That's all that matters. The crowd hushed. For a moment it wasn't about him. It was about her. About survival turned into testimony. That night when the house was quiet, Emily came into my room with her sketchbook. She opened to a page where she had drawn herself. Arms bared, scars glowing, surrounded by flames that didn't consume but illuminated. "Do you like it?" she asked. I traced the lines with my fingers. My throat ached. "It's perfect," I whispered. She leaned against me, the sketchbook between us. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we finally get to start over." The window was open. The night air was cool. And for the first time since the fire, I felt like we weren't breathing smoke anymore.